Hey everybody, and welcome to Malt Muser Whiskey Reviews. I am Eric. Up on the bar for today, I got two bourbons going head to head. Old Forester 1897 Bottled and Bond, and the Old Forester 1920 Prohibition Style. I'm going to give you a nose taste finish review of these whiskeys. I'll tell you a bit about their value, give you my final thoughts, final score, tell you which one's better, leave you with the malt musing. But first, if you've yet to, take a second, hit subscribe. It'll make sure you don't miss any of my whiskey reviews, which come out every single Friday here on YouTube, as well as let you get notifications for my Tuesday happy hours every Tuesday at 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. And if you are returning, thanks so much. Do take a second, hit that thumbs up if you enjoyed this review. Okay, so Old Forester, bourbon, Kentucky, Louisville, Kentucky to be exact. The two whiskeys that we're looking at today are the final two that I need to review for their Whiskey Row series. So it started with the 1870 original batch. They have an 1897 Bottled and Bond, a 1910 Old Fine Whiskey, and the 1920 Prohibition Style. And these are basically some craft or more craft presented Old Forester bourbons, really showcasing the evolution of their style from way back in the beginning up to the times of Prohibition. So these two in particular, I'm doing head to head because they are the highest ABV. The first one we'll talk about here is the 1897 Bottled and Bond. This was the second one released in the series. Basically, here's what it has to say. The passage of the Bottled and Bond Act of 1897, Old Forester transitioned from 90 proof to 100 proof, which is required, 58% ABV or 100 proof under the Bottled and Bond Act if you are going to have that on your label. Originally produced in Louisville's Whiskey Row, this whiskey has a rich, bold character reminiscent of 19th century bourbon. So there you go. The third one released in the series is the Prohibition Style. This one comes in at 57.5% ABV or 115 proof. And here's what it has to say. During Prohibition, Owsley Brown, owner of the distillery at the time, was granted a limited permit to bottle medicinal whiskey at the Louisville Whiskey Row, which is 117 West Main Street. Typical barrel proof at that time prior to bottling was 115. So one of the really cool things about the story behind Old Forester is that the original owners, when Prohibition became the law in the United States in 1910, they actually got a permit because he was a pharmacist to sell this stuff medicinally. So he was able to make bourbon through those years. And this is kind of an homage to the style that they were making during Prohibition. Okay, let's get these in the glass. Right. Okay, so since it's a bourbon, we know that these are all natural color. This is the color we are getting on the Bottled and Bond. Quite nice. Neither of these have age statements on them. And that is the Prohibition Style. Very similar in color, I would say. Very tough to distinguish between the two, a little bit more of a red hue on the Prohibition Style. Okay, first up, 1897 Bottled and Bond. Rich and oaky on the nose. Spice, yes. Cinnamon, it's clove, barrel char. It's also got some sweetness. You are talking a little bit of cherry, a little bit of raisin, vanilla, toffee, or caramel, you know, kind of typical bourbon notes. Quite nice. It is just all wrapped in, it's almost a faintly smoky, almost like a little bit of a charcoal thing. This is not Tennessee whiskey or anything like that, but you really do get that fresh oak, charred oak in this, and it's quite nice. It's balanced very well in the nose. Okay, we'll give it a taste here. It arrives sweet, medium bodied, a lot of nice fruits. I get almost like peach, like yellow fruits, and some peach. There's still some of that cherry note in there. And then you get a nice, almost root beer, malted milk ball, kind of spice hit, a bit of cinnamon, a bit of nutmeg, And it's quite an even ride, goes into a pretty long finish. Vanilla, there's some almond nuttiness to it. Quite good. It drinks a little bit lighter than you would expect, perhaps, for a 50% ABV. But definitely doesn't take anything away from it. It's delicious bourbon. Okay, now on to the Prohibition style. Now remember, this one is 7.5% higher on the ABV scale. So this one immediately, it's a bit more aggressive on the nose. You are getting just a hint of ethanol, maybe even just a little bit of mint too. Dark chocolate. Rich caramel, not as much fruit on this one. Again, you are getting some of that oak char, but it's almost like there's a nice kind of gingerbread kind of note to it. Toffee. Yeah, just a bit more spicy in the nose as well. But again, and there's also like a French vanilla thing. It's kind of this creaminess, which is really interesting on the nose. So similar, a little bit of spice, the oak, the sweetness. Okay, give this one a taste here. Much richer, more aggressive. This is heavier on the palate. Darker notes for sure. Still getting a lot of kind of dark chocolate, dark caramel, brown sugar. That oakiness, that charred oak, that effervescence, as I was mentioning earlier, almost like a cola or root beer. Prominent on this one as well. The finish is much more a chocolate vanilla mix. There are hints of cinnamon. There's definitely that spice. It's a little bit more drying. Longer finish though. Wow. Quite good. Do one more sip here and then we'll try water. Okay. We just put a couple drops on both of these. Only about, they do have about 7% ABV separating them, so we don't want to drown them, but doing about 2 drops on the bottled and 2 on that one as well, so should be good there. Okay, it's a palate. We are back to the bottled and bond with a little water. Wow, fresher. Almost even getting a faint citric note and like it's like orange. Interesting. Still a bit lighter, but again, the character, the profile of both of these, you know, you can tell they're from the same family. It's just the way that spice hits. And again, it's very much a cinnamon, not hot spice like red hot cinnamon. It's much more, you're just kind of like typical rather powdered cinnamon, ground cinnamon. Still getting that kind of root beer float thing going on in this one too. It's great. Okay. Delicious stuff. Again, as I was saying earlier, it's got this kind of very level ride all the way through it. The spice isn't too hot. The sweets aren't too sweet. It is just sticky, caramel, dark chocolate. There's more of a coffee kind of note coming into it now, like almost earthy. Again, that maybe even cherry cordial, like a hint of that. That orange is still kind of there, lingering. Great sipping whiskey. Okay. Now with water on the Prohibition style. Again, the spice, it's spicier, it's darker. You're getting hints of almost like that plum very like in the background. But again, both of these are very like charred oak forward. I mean, burnt sugar almost. Not picking up that same slight citric note. This one's actually not changed quite as much with water. Okay, let me give another taste here. Mm-hmm. Again, a bit more feisty, a bit more of an aggressive whiskey, but it pays off with bigger flavor. I mean, my God, this thing really hits. There's cherry, that vanilla, root beer vanilla float type mix, mint. There's a nice, almost savory, mouth-watering quality to it. Again, a long finish, bit more drying still than the bottled and bond. Dark chocolate, rich, just fudgy almost. Good stuff. Okay. So these two bottles, are they readily available? Here in the States, for the most part, yes. To be honest, you actually run into the Prohibition style a little bit more often than maybe the bottled and bond, but these are not difficult to find. If you do, this bottled and bond, you're looking at around $55 to sometimes $60, right in that range. Here in 2021, I think that this one is a medium value. The Prohibition style, this one's going to cost you a little bit more. You are getting 7.5% more ABV. This one lingers in that sometimes 60 to 65, sometimes even 69 range. And I would also give this kind of a medium to medium high value. And I'll tell you a little bit why about that when we get into the final thoughts, which we are going to do right now. So final thoughts. As you may have seen in my previous two reviews of the two whiskeys in this Whiskey Roast series, which I will link for you in this video. I'm a big fan of this line from Old Forester. While I haven't necessarily loved all of their bourbons or thought that they were things that I needed to immediately go out and buy, I've really enjoyed going through all four of these. I think these two are both really, really good. I also really liked the 1910 Old Fine. I think the only one of the series that I would probably not consider buying another bottle of would be the original recipe, but it is no slouch by any means, just a little bit on the overpriced side. So as for these two, I think this bottle and bond is straight. This is a really good sipping whiskey. However, and when I mean sipping is, I mean, it's very like unoffensive. It's not going to challenge you much. It's very relaxing. However, I would say that out of this series, the 1910 Old Fine whiskey is probably a little bit of a stronger bottle to go for if you're looking for that. It may be a bit harder to find, but I think it does what this one does just a little bit better because of that double barrel nature of it. That said, this is no slouch at all. It's delicious. I'm going to give this a solid 3.75 out of 5. And so, as you've probably figured, I think the favorite and the winner of this little versus here is going to be the 1920 Prohibition style. In fact, I think this 1920 Prohibition style may be the best of the series. And here's why. It is, while it doesn't have an age statement, it is competitively priced with other whiskeys that are high ABV. You're getting 57.5%, so it's 7.5 more ABV, 7.5 more alcohol by volume than you are getting out of the bottled and bond. I just think that the flavor intensity, the depth and complexity of this just makes it stand out on its own. I think this is the best one out of the series, followed closely behind by the 1910. This is just a great bourbon. It's honestly probably one of my favorite bourbons and one that I'm going to have around on my bar pretty much at all times. And while I'm not necessarily sure I would use this in a cocktail per se, it definitely is just one of those great sipping whiskeys for me that brings some kind of power and some punch and tons of just heavy flavor and a good amount of complexity. Again, I love the Whiskey Roast series, but as for this versus, the Prohibition style 1920 wins it, and I'm going to give this a 4.25 out of 5. So 4.25 out of 5 for the Old Forester 1920, 3.75 for the Old Forester 1897. And with that, I will kick you on over to your malt musing. And don't forget to hit that thumbs up if you enjoyed this video. I'll catch you next time here on Malt Muser Whiskey Reviews. Slunch.